everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany, here with my co-host Emily Campagno and Harris Faulkner. Also joining us, Fox and Friends co-host Ainsley Earhart and Fox News contributor and retired U.S. Marine bomb tech Joey Jones. We begin with the two leading presidential candidates hitting the trail in pretty different ways this past weekend. In fact, on one side, you had President Biden. He's rubbing elbows with the rich and famous. It was a glitzy Hollywood fundraiser. The headlining stars included George Clooney, Julia Roberts, and former President Obama. By the time it was all over, the Biden campaign added over $30 million to its war chest, breaking a Democratic fundraising record. I stress Democratic because recall, former President Trump beat that Radio City fundraiser. He holds the ultimate record. Meanwhile, former President Trump reached out to Black voters during a roundtable discussion at a Detroit church. He says Biden's broken southern border is hurting Black Americans.
Crooked Joe Biden has done nothing for you except talk. It's only talk. It's all talk. He gets nothing. He gets nothing for anyone. He was lost. He's in Europe. He's walking around. He doesn't know where the hell he is, and he's supposed to help Detroit. I don't think so. The Black community is being hurt more by the illegal aliens, 16, 17 million. They're taking your jobs. You're down 6-7% from where you were just 3 years ago with me.
The church's pastor personally thanked Trump for stopping by.
President Trump, I'm so humbled that you would be here. President Obama never came to the hood, so to speak, right? President Joe Biden, he went to the big NAACP dinner, but he never came to the hood. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor. Very humble. Really nice. Thank you. My honor.
These are huge moments, Ainsley. I spoke to Friday about this. I mean, you had Trump at a Harlem bodega. You had Trump, I remember it was during Fox and Friends that it broke when he was with union workers at the start of his trial. You know, how often do you see Biden in these retail politics settings with real Americans?
That's the difference. I mean, we like watching Julia Roberts and Pretty Woman. We like seeing some of these actors. But I'm not going to vote because they're telling me to vote for the candidate that they like. They are elites. We can't relate to them. They have gazillion dollars in their bank account, and we appreciate their art and their industry. But I don't care about their politics. We know where Hollywood stands. I don't relate to that. I care about the border. I care about crime. I care about inflation, gas prices, grocery bills. That's what everyone, when we go to the diners, that's what they're all talking about. When you see Trump at a Black church, how wonderful is that? To know that not only, Christian values are important to many Americans, but also to connect the Black and white communities. And for him to go to the Black communities and say, what do you want me to do for you as a president? That resonates with the Black community. And I know the majority of Black individuals are probably going to vote Democratic, and that's what the polls show. But Trump is getting so many more than he even did 4 years ago. And that says a lot.
It does say a lot, and the numbers don't lie. I mean, you look at New York Times Siena, and you see Trump pulling in 23% of the Black community. Wall Street Journal battleground states pulling in 30% of the Black community. Jim Clyburn, however, says if you believe those numbers, he has a bridge to sell you. Well, when I filled in for Sean Hannity on Friday night, I asked Senator Tim Scott about that bridge. He may be willing to buy it. Take a listen.
Something that's amiss with the polling. Anybody who believes that Donald Trump will get 30% of the Black male vote or 12% of the Black female vote, I got a bridge down there on Johns Island, and I'll sell you.
That bridge leads to Kiowa Island, one of the greatest tourist destinations in all of the country. I might buy that bridge, number one. Number two, I take that bet. I will take that bet. I can tell you, Donald Trump can exceed 30% of the Black male vote in America.
Wow.
Two big reasons why. Number one, jobs. Number two, justice.
Harris, jobs and justice are his rationale.
So I loved what you said, bringing people together, whites, Blacks, people from every ilk, from economic, from socio, all of it,
all
bringing
of God's
them together.
Yep.
That is what people say they want. We're so divided right now. And Biden is not doing that. In fact, he's bringing in people who are not American citizens and further dividing us, making us basically resent people who are taking our resources. Like, he's driving feelings of hate and ill will. And it's really sad because no one wants to feel that way about anybody. We're united. But this is a sovereign nation, and he's broken that. I will say this with Tim Scott. I remember the first time I ever interviewed Kevin Walling, who sits in the center seat sometimes. He's a Democrat on the network as a Fox News contributor. And he said that the person that he most feared as a vice presidential candidate would be Senator Tim Scott. Because, again, he would bring people together across the political aisle. I think it's fascinating that you had the conversation you did with him Friday night. And where we are, there are a lot of options for the former president to choose VP. And there are a lot of options for where he could go right now. He's going to places that bring people together that aren't normally visited. And they said specifically, the hood. Mr. President, you came to see us, the hood.
It's fascinating. And I mean, Joey, I think there's a level of denialism among Democrats. We didn't play the beginning of Clyburn's comments, but the beginning of what he told Playbook was Biden's doing exactly what he needs to do. When you're staring down polling like that, how do you believe you're doing exactly what you need to do?
You know, the Democrat Party has done a really good job of just saying something until they hope you believe it. I use the term a lot that my mom used growing up, don't spit in my face and tell me it's raining. And that's a lot of what their messaging is. If they just stay to the narrative and stay to the message, maybe people won't see where the economy is. Maybe people won't see what's happening with the border. I think on this entire issue, if President Trump is going to places like Detroit, and New York, we understand why he was here, but if he's going to places like Detroit, and there are other places apparently on the list that are states that he may not think he can even win, it's because he knows his base is behind him at 98, 99, 100%. President Biden can't say that. President Biden can't say that so much that he's trying to find new ways to appeal to those big blocks, the black voters or young voters or even elderly voters. When you go and you have a fundraiser with every celebrity you can find, it's not because they're going to sway voters. It's because somebody's going to pay $1 million to get to have dinner with George Clooney. They're going to pay $1 million to your campaign, which means that he's trying to get all the money he can to go out and register voters and get people to the polls on Election Day because his base isn't there for him the same way that Donald Trump's is now. With that being said, Donald Trump better be doing the same thing, getting voters registered into the polls.
Yes, and I was thrilled to hear at that Bronx rally that was happening. They were registering voters. That's what needs to be done. Emily, you know, I want to read you this because you made a really good point last week about the Clooneys and kind of this older generation of celebrities and banking on those celebrities to bring home, you know, Gen Z. I think it's a big bet. But I thought of you when I read this morning in the New York Times. A Hollywood heavyweight is Biden's secret weapon against Trump. They talk about the longtime movie mogul, Jeffrey Katzenberg. They said when President Biden made clear last year he was planning to run for another term, some important Democratic contributors expressed doubt. He was too old, they feared. He was not up for another 4 years. It fell to Jeffrey Katzenberg to tell them that they were wrong. And it goes through how this movie mogul has helped him raise money, has helped convince people he's our guy. But I just don't know that Hollywood is the secret weapon in 2024.
Well, it makes sense that a storyteller, a producer, a movie maker is creating and producing the sham that is the Democratic Party's campaign, right? Because it's all based on the gaslighting that you articulated. The thing that I've come to appreciate and be horrified by, unfortunately, is that you're right, because the influence of this aging generation of Hollywood stars really has no influence, certainly on Gen Z, and on very few rational, like-minded adults that think for themselves other than, oh, let me try the face cream they're peddling on their Instagram. Really, it's about padding the war coffers. And the frightening thing in this election that it would do us really well to continue appreciating is that this is the highest, the record-breaking campaign cycle from California for both parties.
Yeah.
Like by a ton. And so it's been called the political ATM of California, the Hollywood elites. And so what matters next is not essentially how far off the Democrat Party is from the ideals and the preferences and priorities of average Americans, because that is true. It's how much they're raising, because that is going to turn out into their abortion message, the women's rights message, the voting early message. And so we need to carry it across the finish line and take it further than just knowing, what are these guys for? You know, we're not for the same thing. They're really padding their bank accounts, and that's the scary thing. You
know that state so well. And I want to ask this, because Donald Trump went first. He went before Joe Biden to go get that big money haul. How do Republicans use that money? You just articulated how Democrats will continue to use it on abortion messaging, so on and so forth. what are Republicans going to do?
And as the headline said, Donald Trump benefited from multiple ways from the rake-in in San Francisco, California. I think depending on how it's utilized, the influence is really key. Harnessing the tech workers, harnessing the tech industry without being the kind of bed-lay mate that Kamala Harris is, right? When she took those huge dollars while saying that she was for victims of, for example, cybercrime, and yet accepting millions of dollars from those who were litigating against those victims. So authenticity matters, rallying the troops matters there, and really speaking to those Californians who, as we all know, can't afford living there anymore.
Yeah, and the one thing I would say is, Trump, yes, he has been behind in cash on hand, but he has brought in hundreds of millions, and I put an S on the end of 100, since the conviction. Yes. And we've seen that the joint fundraising with the RNC and the other Republican entities. So he's playing catch up.
I wish you would do a campaign
job.
ad with some of that money, showing those illegal immigrants that beat up the cops in Times Square and then flipped off the camera. Yes. That's Joe Biden's border crisis right there.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And on early voting.
Yes.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.